Welcome back to Exposed, the climate of fear. Even most global warming skeptics believe the Earth is warmed to about the same extent that Al Gore does. Many also think that man may have an impact on the warming. They just don't believe it's nearly as significant as Al Gore does. It doesn't sound like a difference that should be cast as a battle between world saviors and Holocaust deniers, but it is. The centerpiece of this debate is a star vehicle for the former vice president, the Oscar-winning movie, An Inconvenient Truth. An Inconvenient Truth. One of the most critically acclaimed documentaries of our times, and also one of the scariest.
Global warming paradoxically causes not only more flooding, but also more drought. Big hurricanes, tornadoes, fearsome diseases, polio, tuberculosis, West Nile virus, avian flu, SARS, polar bears that have actually drowned, mosquitoes, caterpillars, communism, it's slavery, global warming, global warming, global warming.
Lost among all the extreme rhetoric, any semblance of balance. An Inconvenient Truth is a study in absolutes, a one-sided argument devoid of any gray area.
There's not a single fact or date or number that's been used to make this up that's in any controversy. Isn't there a disagreement among scientists about whether the problem is real or not? Actually, not really.
Attention! You're about to meet people that aren't really real.
Politicians and some of the scientists like to say that there's a consensus now on global warming, or the science has been settled. But you have to ask them, what is there a consensus on? Because it really makes a difference. What are you talking about? The only consensus I'm aware of is that it's warmed in the last century.
They completely ignore the fact that there's this thing called the Oregon Petition that was signed by 19,000 professionals and scientists who don't agree with the idea that we are causing climate change.
One of the statements in the SPM was the statement that, if you boil it down, it says we are 90% certain that most of the warming in the last 50 years was due to human effects. I don't agree with that. I think things are much more ambiguous.
Well, clearly these guys haven't seen the movie. There was, video of ice falling and pictures of snow melting and stuff. Perhaps we should meet some of Al Gore's supporting cast members. First up, Mount Kilimanjaro.
This is Mount Kilimanjaro more than 30 years ago and more recently. Within the decade, there will be no more snows of Kilimanjaro.
Half of the snow was gone when Hemingway wrote The Snows of Kilimanjaro. That tells you right there that the cause of that was not human effects on the climate. There is no upward trend in the temperature for that region. The reason the snows are going away is not because of temperature changes, but probably because of a lowering of the cloud amounts and less precipitation.
All right, how about another co-star? It's the so-called hockey stick crowd. This is the version shown by Al Gore. However, the original version used by the IPCC contained a wide margin of error not shown in An Inconvenient Truth. Inconvenient, huh? Critics say there's even more missing.
There are two factors that most climatologists think happened that don't seem to be included in it, which are the Little Ice Age, which is a very cold period that ended in the late 19th century, and the medieval warm period around 1000 or so.
Since the third UN report, for which this was the smoking gun, there's been a fourth UN report. Does anybody see a hockey stick in there anywhere? I can't see ya. It's not in there. Guess what? It's airbrushed out in classic fashion, and they don't even mention why it's not here. What hockey stick? I didn't see any hockey stick.
Clearly. I mean, these guys haven't seen the movie, right? Because any movie with charts and graphs this big, they've got to be right. Now, here's one of Al Gore's favorite charts, comparing CO2 levels and temperature.
When there is more carbon dioxide, the temperature gets warmer. Look how far above the natural cycle this is, and we've done that.
We? Meaning you and me? I guess it looks pretty convincing. Gore assumes here that CO2 levels are causing temperatures to rise, but look, could it be the other way around?
We now know for certain that the temperature changes before the CO2. And one of the fundamental assumptions that Gore doesn't understand is that in the theory of global warming due to humans is the CO2 goes up, the temperature will go up. Well, the ice core record shows it's exactly the opposite.
Now what about that really cool animation of Florida and Manhattan drowning? Cool, huh? You've seen these horrific scenarios everywhere based purely on catastrophic hypotheticals that dramatically exaggerate even what the UN says. It's Al Gore's best supporting actor. The word if.
If we have an increase of 5 degrees, if Greenland broke up and melted, if this were to go, sea level worldwide would go up 20 feet.
Where he's misleading is that he gives the impression that this is something that is likely to happen. The likelihood of this is next to nil.
The IPCC report is that the upper limit of sea level rise by the year 2100 is going to be about 23 inches.
That's why Al Gore makes up 20 feet. The truth isn't scary.
Just look at the difference between Greenland's ice melt in Al Gore's scenario when spread out over a century versus what the IPCC projects.
To come up with 20 feet is really grasping at straws, I think. But it does make a dramatic image. It makes a startling announcement. And that is where, as I heard one commentator say, it makes blood shoot out of my eyes.
Gee, I wonder who he could be talking about. Anyway, the bottom line is, no one's denying that the globe has warmed. It has. 0.74 degrees Celsius. But there's a disagreement on why. And there's even more disagreement on if it will be catastrophic or not. The tactics Al Gore uses in An Inconvenient Truth deserve an Oscar. We all have to remember, there's a difference between science and science fiction. Joined now by Chris Horner. He is the author of The Politically Incorrect Guide to Global Warming. Chris, I want to start here. People that are on the special or to speak out are always going to be accused of taking money from big oil. How do you respond to that? You're in bed with big oil, they say.
That's generally employed by people who aren't comfortable with the issues or the facts and they want to change the subject. If industry funding corrupts someone's message, however, I suggest the alarmists have an awful lot of explaining to do. They receive an awful lot more in industry and industry-related funding every year, but let's just make the public record is quite clear. We do not receive lots of money from big oil, and for some reason that seems to be the claim that the alarmists want to shift the debate onto, even though they know the truth there too.
So are you saying that the reason why this is such a big deal is because of money? How much money do we spend on research on climate change and global warming compared to, let's say, cancer?
I believe slightly more. Let's just say the same amount on both climate-related activities and the amount we send to the National Cancer Institutes every year, which I think is rather shameful. The administration has done quite a bit right on this issue, but to their discredit, they boast that they spend so much more on global warming issues than they do AIDS. I think that's disgraceful. This is a political issue because it's been politicized, and we wouldn't even be talking about it right now if it weren't for the politicians.
Okay. In the Al Gore movie, he keeps talking about all of these scientists, and there's nothing but consensus, and discredit everybody else that does. How does the IPCC even work? This is the group of thousands of scientists that write this report.
Right, except thousands of people obviously can't write a report. Just think of the impracticalities there. It doesn't happen that way. Here's what happens. They don't conduct science. They review the existing literature. And the thousands of scientists select or emphasize what it is they want to. We've seen this, sometimes disgracefully. However, these scientists are generally assigned 1 page to a page and a half to write with one other author. They're never asked if they agree with anything else, never asked if they agree with the chapter, the underlying work, let alone the summary for policymakers, which is written by bureaucrats and politicians and pressure group lobbyists who are in one room down a hall where the lead authors of the chapters, which are compilations of these page to page and a half writings, and a runner runs back and forth telling the lead authors, the scientists, the pressure group lobbyists want you to change the following to be in harmony with the summary. Remember, this is a document that is produced generally, the summary of which is issued months before the actual underlying work is actually even written. That should tell you something. And this writing process whereby runners subject, very credentialed scientists, many of whom have dropped off, to the humiliation of having to change their underlying work to agree with something politicians want to say, which, like I say, is why many of these so-called world's leading scientists do remain in the process, but many also have dropped off.
Chris, one thing that somebody could Google right now, and you watched the movie and you said, oh, geez, I wish people would just Google this fact. In the movie, Inconvenient Truth, what would be the one fact they should Google?
Well, the cause and effect relationship of CO2 and temperatures. Obviously, temperatures go up throughout history. The scientific literature is fairly clear, fairly uniform. Temperatures go up, then CO2 concentrations go up. CO2 does not drive temperature.
Great. Chris Horner, thanks. Up next, why innovation and not regulation is the real answer on global warming. We'll be back.